Have you ever stopped to realize that most of what you call your life is nothing more than a swirl of thoughts and emotions bouncing inside your head? That burning anxiety that keeps you awake, that memory that tears you apart, that endless chase for approval, none of it is the world itself. It's only the mirror of your mind distorting reality. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you never learn to master that mirror, you will live and die bewildered, never touching the life that was always waiting behind it. The Stoics knew this well. What tears you down is not life itself, but the way your mind interprets it. And if you don't take command, it will command you. If you feel the weight of this truth pressing against you, don't turn away. Also, consider subscribing for yourself. Make it a declaration that you refuse to remain a prisoner of distorted reflections, and that you choose the path of clarity, strength, and self-discovery. The mirror of the mind. The strange thing about life is how two people can stand in the very same place, look at the very same scene, and yet walk away with completely different experiences. One might feel joy, the other bitterness. One might see opportunity, the other only threat. The world outside hasn't changed. It's the mirror inside their minds that bends what they see. And if we're honest, this is happening to all of us every single day. The question is not simply what is out there, but what is my mind showing me? Think about how a warped mirror works. Stand before it, and suddenly your head looks too big, your legs too short, or your body strangely curved. The reflection is not reality, it's a distortion. Our minds do the same. Stress bends the mirror one way, ego bends it another. If you've wrapped your whole identity around being successful, then failure won't just sting. It will feel like your very self has shattered. If you've convinced yourself you're unwanted, then even kindness might look suspicious, as though people have hidden motives. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." That's the trap of the mirror. Our repeated thoughts stain it, and soon, everything we see carries that shade. This is why two siblings can grow up in the same house, under the same parents, yet remember childhood in completely opposite ways. One recalls warmth, laughter, and lessons. The other remembers nothing but criticism and pain. It isn't always that one is lying. It's that each of their mirrors caught a different reflection, and over time those reflections hardened into truth. The Stoics understood this danger clearly. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." What he meant was that the events of life are neutral. The mirror of your mind gives them shape, color, and meaning. But here's the problem. Most of us never question our mirror. We assume what we see must be the way things really are, and so distortions become reality. Anxiety paints the future darker than it truly is. Nostalgia polishes the past brighter than it ever was. Desire stretches things into exaggerated shapes, making us believe we'll only be happy if we reach that one goal or own that one object. Carl Jung once wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." The mirror of the mind can keep you dreaming illusions unless you dare to look deeper, to see not just the reflection, but the one standing behind it. Let's test this with a simple example. Imagine you walk into a room and three people stop talking the moment you enter. If your mental mirror is colored by insecurity, you'll think, "They were gossiping about me." If your mirror is shaped by pride, you'll think, "They must respect me too much to speak freely." If your mirror is grounded and calm, you might think, "Maybe they were finishing up something private." The event didn't change. Your mirror did. This is why Seneca warned, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." The mind shows us a distorted version, and we end up fighting battles that never truly existed. So, what can we do? We can polish the mirror. When an old mirror gathers dust, it doesn't need to be thrown away, it just needs cleaning. Likewise, the mind doesn't need to be destroyed, only disciplined. Polishing the mirror means slowing down before reacting, noticing how your thoughts bend what you're seeing. For instance, if you feel anger rising, pause and ask, is this anger coming from what actually happened, or from the way my mind is reflecting it? That simple step is like wiping away the smudge before trusting the reflection. Aristotle once said, "The self-controlled person is free." The more you polish the mirror, the freer you become from being ruled by distorted images. But polishing is not a one-time act, it's a daily practice. Just as a mirror gathers dust again and again, the mind gathers stress, judgments, and old habits. A few minutes of reflection each day helps. You might sit quietly in the morning and ask yourself, what color are my thoughts today? What kind of world is my mirror reflecting back to me? Even this simple awareness begins to smooth out distortions. And over time, something beautiful happens. The mirror starts showing reality with less noise, less prejudice, less fear. Still, let's be clear, the mirror will never fully capture the truth. A mirror can only reflect what stands before it, never the one behind it. This is where philosophy meets mystery. Plato once described life as living in a cave, mistaking shadows for reality. Our mental mirror, no matter how polished, still only reflects the shadows of our senses. The real journey is not only to polish the mirror, but to slip behind it, to discover the one who is watching. When you glimpse even a fragment of that truth, life no longer feels like a chain of random reflections. It becomes rooted, purposeful, and alive. So ask yourself today, are you living in reflections, or are you polishing your way toward clarity? The world is out there, vast, rich, vibrant, but what you truly experience is only as clear as the mirror inside you. Master that, and you master not just your mind, but your entire experience of life. As Socrates reminded us, the unexamined life is not worth living. Examining your mirror is the first step to living a life worth remembering. How other creatures see it. It's strange when you stop and think about it, how the same world can look completely different depending on who or what is looking at it. A forest at sunset to you might look peaceful, even beautiful, but to a wolf, that same forest is nothing but the backdrop to a hunt. To a bird, it's a network of branches, a home in the sky. To a butterfly, it's a field of colors and nectar trails. Nothing has changed in the forest itself. What changes is the mirror through which it's seen, and this is exactly how life works, not only for animals, but for us. Take the tiger as an example. To the tiger, you are not a person with dreams, feelings, and memories. You are calories. You are energy. Breakfast, lunch, or dinner, that's it. Because the tiger's mind, its mirror, has been shaped by survival. Its lens is narrow but effective. It reduces life to food, territory, and instinct. That's all it needs to carry on its existence. The grasshopper, entirely different. Its mirror is tuned to vibrations in the ground, the presence of predators, the smell of plants. It lives in a different reality, though both tiger and grasshopper share the same earth. Seneca once said, "Every animal is driven to self-preservation by nature, and that drive creates the filter through which each creature experiences the world." Now, here's where it gets interesting. Humans have the gift of a wider mirror. Our minds are not bound only to food or shelter. We can reflect more: art, love, beauty, knowledge, even questions about the meaning of existence. This wider mirror gives us access to experiences no tiger or grasshopper could ever have. Marcus Aurelius captured this when he wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Our thoughts, our judgments, the shape of our mirror, these don't just reflect reality. They create the experience of life itself. But here lies the danger. As much as our mirror is capable of reflecting more, it is also capable of distorting more. Prejudice, judgment, and strong identities shrink it down until it's no better than the tigers. When we cling too tightly to labels, race, politics, success, failure, we reduce our wide mirror into a narrow one, showing us only fragments of life that confirm what we already believe. Suddenly, we don't see the world as it is. We only see what fits into the story we've told ourselves. Epictetus warned against this kind of blindness when he said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. The opinions fog the mirror, and soon we mistake distortion for truth." Think of how quickly judgment can warp perception. A stranger cuts you off in traffic, and your mirror reflects anger. "He disrespected me. He thinks his time is more valuable." Another person, with a calmer mirror, might think, "Maybe he's rushing to the hospital." The event was the same, but the reflection was entirely different. Carl Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." In other words, the distortion you see is often your own projection, not the truth of what's in front of you. We like to believe our human mirror is always clearer than that of other creatures. But is it? Many times our so-called intelligence just makes the distortions more complicated. Animals live with simple mirrors: survival, reproduction, instinct. We add layers: status, ego, ideology, fear of the future, regret of the past. And the more layers, the harder it becomes to see clearly. Plato's allegory of the cave reminds us of this. People mistake shadows for reality and never turn to see the source of the light. Our mirrors often show us shadows, and we take them as the whole of life. So what does it mean to truly use our wider mirror? It means recognizing both its potential and its traps. It means realizing that while we can see more than other creatures, we must also guard against seeing less because of prejudice or fear. Aristotle observed, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." When you notice your mirror shrinking, when you catch yourself trapped in a narrow judgment, that is the moment self-knowledge can expand your vision again. Think about conflict between nations, between neighbors, even within families. Much of it comes down to distorted mirrors. Each side sees the other through a lens of suspicion, pride, or past injury. Each side believes its reflection is the truth, yet both mirrors are warped. If we polished them, even slightly, maybe we'd see not enemies, but fellow humans. Maybe we'd realize the tiger isn't the only one that reduces others to food. We reduce people to categories, to them, to stereotypes. And in doing so, we lose the richness of what's really there. The Stoics often reminded themselves to step back from these distortions. Marcus Aurelius urged, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." To polish the mirror means to stop blaming the outside for what is, at root, a reflection problem. The tiger can't change its mirror. It will always see prey. The grasshopper can't change its mirror. It will always see vibrations. But you and I? We have a choice. We can widen or shrink our mirror. We can polish or cloud it. We can choose clarity over distortion. So ask yourself, when you look at life today, are you seeing it with the wide mirror of a human being, capable of wonder and wisdom? Or have you let judgment and identity shrink it down to something narrow, where you see only what you fear, what you crave, or what you despise? The gift of being human is not that we see the world, it's that we can see more than the world if we choose. And mastering that choice is the first step toward mastering the mind itself. Why most people die bewildered. There's a sobering reality that most of us don't like to face. The majority of people reach the end of their lives unprepared, unsettled, and confused. Not because death itself is some great shock, it's the only guarantee we've ever had, but because of a haunting realization that comes too late. They look back and see that they never truly lived. They mistook the noise in their head for life itself, and when the curtain falls, they suddenly realize they never stepped onto the real stage. Think about it. How much of your day is spent actually experiencing what's in front of you, compared to how much is spent worrying, replaying old arguments, or rehearsing future scenarios that may never happen? For many, life passes as if they were sitting in a dark theater, watching reflections flicker on the screen, never noticing the vibrant world waiting outside. Carl Jung captured this tragedy when he wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." We chase distractions, drown ourselves in noise, anything to avoid the quiet truth. But in avoiding ourselves, we miss life itself. The Stoics constantly warned against this. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't being morbid, he was being urgent. He knew that the danger of tomorrow thinking, of assuming endless time, is what blinds us. People plan to live later, after the promotion, after the kids are grown, after retirement. But later rarely comes. And so when death does, confusion rushes in, because the mind realizes too late that it spent decades busy but never alive. This bewilderment at death is not simply fear of the unknown. It's the disorientation of never having been fully present. Seneca described it perfectly. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Time itself was never the issue. Attention was. Presence was. Instead of living, most people rehearse life in their heads, living in thought rather than reality. And so the final moment comes like a rude awakening from a long dream. Picture someone who has spent their whole life climbing a ladder, only to realize on their last day that the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. This is what happens when you let your mind's mirror dictate your experience. You chase reflections, money, reputation, recognition, because your distorted mirror tells you these are life itself. Yet at the end, none of them come with you. What remains is the quiet realization that you never looked behind the mirror to see who you truly were. But here's the thing. You don't have to wait until your last breath to figure this out. You can turn the mirror around now. You can question your reflections today. Ask yourself, am I living in my thoughts, or am I touching reality? When I spend hours scrolling, stressing, or arguing in my head, am I actually experiencing life, or am I lost in shadows? Plato's allegory of the cave reminds us of this. Most people spend their entire lives watching shadows dance on the wall, never turning to see the fire, never stepping outside into the light. Even modern psychology agrees. Jung explained that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's why death feels bewildering to so many. It's the sudden shock of seeing that fate was not some outside force. It was the unconscious mind, the unpolished mirror running the show. To master your mind then is not about controlling every thought. It's about waking up. It's about noticing when you're lost in reflection and daring to step into the rawness of the present. So, what can be done? Start with small awakenings. Pay attention to your breath while you wait in line instead of scrolling. Actually taste your food instead of eating with your mind somewhere else. When anger rises, pause long enough to ask, is this reality or is this my mirror bending the truth? These tiny acts add up. They begin to train the mind to reflect more clearly, to stop clouding life with distortion. Here's the paradox. The more you resist death, the more bewildered you'll be when it arrives. But the more you accept it, hold it in your awareness, as the Stoics did, the more alive you become. Epictetus reminded his students, death is not dreadful, but the dread of death is dreadful. In other words, it's not death itself that confuses us. It's living in denial of it. By acknowledging it now, you sharpen your mirror. You realize that each ordinary moment is extraordinary because it won't return. The reason most people die bewildered is simple. They spent life trying to escape discomfort, chasing illusions, and running from silence. But you don't have to. You can choose presence. You can polish your mirror. You can look behind it and meet the one who's been there all along, you. If you live this way, death won't arrive as a bewildering stranger. It will arrive as an old companion, and you will meet it not with confusion, but with clarity, even gratitude. The choice is in your hands now. Will you keep chasing shadows on the mirror, or will you turn around and live in the light? The Stoics and the philosophers who came before us left us a map. The only question is whether we'll follow it before it's too late. The technique, polishing the mirror. One of the hardest truths to accept is that most of what clouds our lives doesn't come from the world itself. It comes from within. The arguments, the overthinking, the constant comparisons, the fears of what might happen. None of these belong to reality directly. They're dust on the mirror of our minds. And just like a dusty mirror in your home, the more it goes unattended, the less clearly it reflects what's truly in front of it. Over time, you stop seeing things as they are and start seeing only the dirt. That's why clarity doesn't come from adding more information, more opinions, or more noise. It comes from polishing the mirror. Imagine waking up tomorrow and, instead of rushing to check messages or dive into the day's chaos, you give yourself 2 quiet minutes. You sit, breathe, and watch your thoughts rise and fall like clouds drifting across the sky. You don't chase them, you don't fight them, you just notice. That's polishing. It's simple, but it's not easy because the mind is restless. Yet even in those short moments, something shifts. The dust begins to settle. What felt overwhelming starts to lose its sharp edge. But why does this matter so much? Because if you don't polish your mind, you mistake distortions for reality. A small criticism feels like a personal attack. A delay at the airport feels like a catastrophe. One anxious thought snowballs into the belief that your whole life is falling apart. Epictetus warned against this centuries ago. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. The dust on the mirror is that view. By clearing it, you begin to respond to life instead of reacting blindly to your own cloudy reflections. There's another layer to this. When the mind is dusty, even your best moments get dulled. Think about it. You could be at a beautiful dinner, surrounded by people who care for you, yet one stressful thought, an email you forgot to answer, a bill you need to pay, hijacks your mind. The joy is right in front of you, but you don't taste it, don't feel it, because the mirror isn't clear. Seneca once wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." Polishing is how you train yourself to do exactly that. Of course, this isn't about emptying the mind forever or living without thoughts. That's not possible. The mirror will always reflect. What matters is how clearly it does so. Just as you wouldn't expect a polished mirror to stay spotless forever, you can't expect your mind to remain perfectly calm and clear. Dust will always return, through stress, habits, or circumstance. But polishing regularly makes sure the dust never blinds you. It becomes maintenance, not a miracle. So how do you build this habit? Start small. 2 minutes in the morning, as we said, is powerful. but you can polish any time. Waiting in traffic? Instead of cursing the delay, breathe and notice how your impatience rises and falls. Standing in line? Instead of scrolling your phone, watch your thoughts. Ask yourself, what story is my mind spinning right now? Even this question begins the polishing because it shifts you from being lost in the dust to observing it. And here's the paradox. The more you polish, the less you need to control everything. Life won't suddenly become perfect, but it will appear clearer, sharper, truer. The fight with your partner won't spiral into catastrophe in your head. The bad day at work won't become a story about how you're destined to fail. You'll see things as they are, sometimes challenging, sometimes beautiful, but always real. The Stoics lived this way, practicing daily to keep the mirror of their mind clean so they could meet life directly instead of through distortion. Think about how this would change your life. Instead of being tossed around by every wave of emotion, you'd feel a steadiness, a quiet strength. Instead of wasting energy fighting shadows, you'd move with clarity. And when challenges came, as they always do, you'd meet them with a mind clear enough to see not just the problem, but the opportunity within it. That's what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." With a polished mirror, obstacles don't just block you, they guide you. The choice then is simple. You can keep staring at life through a dusty mirror, mistaking smudges for truth, or you can start polishing, even for a few minutes each day, and discover what's been hidden all along, the vivid, unfiltered reality of your own existence. And when you live this way, death itself will not find you bewildered, because you will have truly lived, not in distortions, but in clarity. The geometry of focus. Have you ever noticed how sharp your mind can feel in a dream? Think about it. In sleep, you can see faces, landscapes, and even entire conversations in vivid detail. Yet when you wake up, try to picture the same scene, and it slips away, blurry and fragmented. Isn't it strange that your imagination can sometimes work better while you're unconscious than when you're fully awake? That shows us something important. Our minds are powerful, but we don't train them. And just like an untrained body grows weak, an unfocused mind grows dull. Focus is not something that appears out of nowhere, it's something you build. The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." But what is the quality of a thought if your mind cannot hold it steady? Most of us live with a mind that jumps around like a restless child, unable to sit still long enough to really see. Training focus, then, is like teaching that child to sit calmly and observe, to pay attention not just in passing but with full presence. Here's a simple practice that shows how it works. Take an ordinary object, your coffee cup, a chair in the corner, even your own hand. Instead of seeing it vaguely, try breaking it down into shapes. See the curve of the handle as a circle, the flat bottom as a square, the slope of your fingers as triangles. This exercise might sound trivial, but it strengthens something essential: your ability to hold form in the mind. Every time you notice a new shape, you stretch your attention a little further. Every time you resist the urge to drift away, you sharpen your inner vision. Why is this powerful? Because attention is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the more strength it carries into every area of life. Epictetus reminded his students, "No great thing is created suddenly." Focus is no different. If you cannot focus on something as simple as the shapes within a coffee cup, how can you expect to hold steady in moments of stress, conflict, or deep decision-making? The small training prepares you for the larger challenges. Think of it as mental geometry. A body can be broken down into lines, angles, and structures. The more precisely you notice these forms, the more vividly you can imagine them, and the more resilient your mind becomes. It's like learning to see life in high definition instead of settling for a blurred picture. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Geometric focus is one way of awakening. It teaches you not to drift passively, but to engage the inner eye, to see with deliberate clarity. And let's be honest, most of us are training the opposite habit. Scrolling endlessly, multitasking, checking notifications every 2 minutes. This doesn't just scatter attention, it fractures it. Over time, the mind loses its sharpness. You try to read a book, and after 2 pages, you're restless. You try to meditate, and you're already itching to check your phone. The mirror of your mind has become clouded not by dust, but by constant distraction. Seneca warned about this centuries ago. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. When your mind is pulled in every direction, you stand firmly in none. Focus rescues you from that fragmentation. Here's another way to look at it. Geometry is the most stable form of order. The triangle, for example, is known as the most stable structure in nature. It holds weight without collapsing. Training your mind to break down reality into shapes isn't just a mental game, it's symbolic. You're teaching your thoughts to take structure, to stop collapsing under pressure. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Focus is a habit, one built by small repeated acts of noticing, holding, and returning attention. What happens if you stick with it? You begin to notice an incredible shift. When you imagine someone's face, it becomes clearer. When you visualize a goal, it feels more tangible. When you sit in silence, your thoughts stop scattering so wildly and begin to take form. In dreams, this clarity comes naturally. Awake, it must be trained. And when it is, you gain something rare in today's world, a mind that sees without distortion. But let's not confuse this with control for the sake of control. The point isn't to dominate every thought or force your imagination into rigid shapes. The point is to give your mind the discipline it needs to serve you instead of ruling you. Think about what that means for your life. If your focus is sharp, arguments don't derail you as easily. Temptations lose some of their power. Creativity flows with greater depth. Even ordinary tasks, listening to a loved one, reading a book, cooking a meal, become richer because you're truly there. Without focus, you're half alive, drifting between images in your mind. With focus, you're present, alive, awake. So the invitation is simple. Start small. Pick one object today and break it down into shapes. Tomorrow, pick another. Over time, you'll find that this geometric practice doesn't just make your imagination sharper, it makes your entire life sharper. The more clearly you can see, the more deeply you can live. And in the end, isn't that the goal? To awaken from the blur, to step out of the dream, and to meet life in full clarity. From reflection to reality. It's easy to mistake the images in our minds for reality itself. We wake up thinking about yesterday's mistakes, replaying conversations, imagining how people see us. Then we rush through the day already weighed down by stories that exist only in thought. The strange part is this. The world outside hasn't even spoken yet, but our minds are already busy narrating. It's like watching a movie where the screen never turns off. But here's the problem. When you only watch the reflections on that screen, nothing in your life actually changes. You stay caught in loops of thought, reacting instead of living. Most people live inside reflections without ever realizing it. They blame fate, luck, or the world for their struggles, never seeing that the real issue lies in the mirror of the mind. And so they remain stuck, surviving, but never fully alive. The Stoics saw this clearly. Epictetus taught, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Isn't that the truth? How often do we spend hours dreading something only to discover it wasn't nearly as bad as we imagined? The suffering was in the reflection, not in reality. When we confuse the two, life feels heavier than it really is. Think of it like standing by a lake. When the water is still, you can see the reflection of the trees, the sky, the clouds. But if the surface is constantly stirred by wind or waves, the reflection becomes distorted, chaotic. The lake is still the lake, but you can no longer see through it. Our minds work the same way. Thoughts, fears, desires, they stir the surface. Reflection becomes confusion. But if you let the water settle, suddenly the lake shows both its surface beauty and its depth. The same is true of your mind. When you step behind the mirror, you don't just watch the ripples, you touch the depth of being itself. Seneca once said, "Life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present, and fear the future." That's exactly what happens when you live in reflection. You are trapped between what has already gone and what hasn't yet arrived. The present moment, the only place life actually happens, is lost. But when you slip behind the mirror, you find the present again. You begin to live not in shadows, but in reality itself. Let's make this practical. Imagine you're in a heated argument. Your mind throws up reflections. "They're attacking me. I need to defend myself. I can't lose this." The reflections spark emotion. Emotion sparks reaction. And soon you're both trapped in a storm of distortion. But if you step behind the mirror, you can pause. You can notice, these are just reflections, not the truth. And in that pause, something changes. You're no longer reacting blindly. You're choosing. That's the difference between being controlled by your mind and directing it. Plato's allegory of the cave is a powerful reminder here. He described people chained in a cave, watching shadows on the wall, mistaking them for reality. But when one person breaks free and turns around, he sees the fire, the light, the real source. Life in reflection is like living in that cave, mistaking shadows for truth. To step behind the mirror is to turn around and see life as it really is. And here's the beauty of it. When you touch reality in this way, even for a moment, everything shifts. Colors seem brighter, conversations feel deeper, small moments carry more weight. You are not just rushing from task to task, you are present. This presence is not dramatic, but it is powerful. It's the difference between confusion and clarity, between a life wasted and a life lived fully. So, how do you practice this? Begin with awareness. Throughout your day, notice when you're lost in thought, caught in stories about the past or worries about the future. Pause and ask, am I watching reflections or am I touching reality? Even this simple question is like stepping behind the mirror for a moment. Over time, those moments grow longer and clarity becomes your natural state. The philosophers and psychologists across ages all point to the same truth. Mastery of the mind is mastery of life. Stay trapped in reflection and you remain a prisoner of illusions. Step into reality and you discover freedom. You don't just survive, you live, and when the final moment comes, you won't meet it bewildered, as if waking from a long dream. You'll meet it with the quiet strength of someone who has truly been alive. The choice is yours. Shadows or substance, reflection or reality. And once you've glimpsed the difference, the answer becomes clear. The danger of misuse. When people first taste a bit of clarity, something interesting happens. They realize that the mind is not fixed, that it can be trained, sharpened, and even directed. And with that realization comes temptation, the temptation to use it as a tool for quick gains. You hear about people trying to manifest money, bend outcomes, or even influence others. It sounds appealing, doesn't it? To use your newfound mental strength to shape the world exactly how you want it. But here's the problem. Chasing control before you've built wisdom is dangerous. It's like giving the keys of a race car to a child. The machine is powerful, but without the maturity to handle it, the result is disaster. The Stoics would have warned us about this. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to keep his intentions pure. He wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." A disciplined mind is not meant to serve greed or ego. It's meant to guide us toward truth and virtue. When you try to bend life to your desires without first mastering yourself, you end up enslaved by the very mind you thought you were controlling. Carl Jung pointed to a similar danger when he said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." Think about that. Instead of using inner strength to turn inward and discover who they are, many use it as a shortcut to escape themselves. They distract with fantasies of wealth, power, or influence, hoping mastery of the mind will deliver external victories. But true mastery isn't about manipulating the outer world. It's about gaining freedom from the illusions inside. If you practice mental discipline only to feed desire, whether it's money, approval, or power, you haven't freed yourself at all. You've only polished your chains. The mind becomes sharper, yes, but sharper in service of the very impulses that distort it. That's not wisdom. That's self-deception. Here's a way to think about it. Imagine you've been given a lamp that can light up any room. You could use it to illuminate dark corners, to see things as they really are. Or you could turn it into a spotlight for your own performance, blinding others while convincing yourself you're the star of the show. Both use the lamp, but only one brings clarity. The same goes for the mind. A trained mind can light the way to truth, or it can become a tool for manipulation. The difference depends on your intention. Epictetus taught that we must focus on what is within our control and release what is not. He said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." When you use mental strength to try and force outcomes, wealth, fame, recognition, you step outside your circle of control. You trade freedom for frustration, because no matter how strong your focus, you cannot command the world to obey. Mastery of the mind isn't about bending reality. It's about aligning yourself with it. It's not the person who gets everything they desire who is free. It's the one who is not ruled by desire in the first place. This is why the danger of misuse is so subtle. The mind can become sharp, but sharpness without direction can cut the one who wields it. The Stoics practiced daily not only to strengthen their focus, but to test their intentions, asking, "Am I using this discipline to live in harmony with nature, or to force my own way upon it?" Think about the stories we've seen in history, leaders who gained great influence but used it for domination, thinkers who discovered truths but twisted them for personal gain. Every one of them misused their mirror. They learned to direct their minds outward, but never stepped behind it to see who they were. And as a result, the very power they developed consumed them. Jung described this in another way. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. It's far easier to play with power than to face your own reflection. But that facing, that stepping behind the mirror, is the real purpose of mental discipline. So what does safe practice look like? It looks like humility. It looks like using focus not to manipulate others, but to understand yourself. It looks like training the mind to see clearly, not to escape reality. It means asking before each practice, am I polishing the mirror to see truth or to feed illusion? One path brings clarity, the other confusion. At the heart of Stoicism lies a powerful reminder: virtue is the only good. Wealth, reputation, pleasure, they're indifferent. What matters is whether you use your mind in service of wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control. The danger of misuse is forgetting this and turning the gift of clarity into another trap of desire. So the warning stands. When you begin to master your mind, resist the urge to use it like a weapon for personal gain. Don't turn discipline into greed or focus into control. Instead, let it guide you deeper. Let it carry you beyond the mirror of thoughts, beyond the parade of reflections, into the stillness of who you really are. Because there, behind the mirror, lies the freedom the Stoics spoke of, the wisdom the philosophers pointed to, and the peace that no amount of external success can match. Practical daily practice. The hardest part about change isn't knowing what to do, it's actually doing it. We all love the idea of clarity, peace, and control over the mind, but when it comes down to the daily practice, we hesitate. Why? Because our minds are clever. They whisper excuses. I'll start tomorrow. I'm too busy. This probably won't make a big difference anyway. And yet, as Seneca wisely put it, life is long if you know how to use it. Daily practice is exactly how you learn to use it. Small, consistent steps are what shift you from being ruled by thoughts to ruling them. So let's start simple. You don't need special tools or hours of meditation. All you need is attention. Pick one object around you, a chair, a cup, a bottle, and break it down into shapes. At first, you'll notice the obvious ones, circles, squares, maybe a few triangles. But keep looking, push yourself, see how many forms you can discover. 20, 50, 100. Suddenly, your mind starts to stretch. You're exercising focus, not by forcing it, but by training it gently, like a muscle. This practice may seem small, but it's powerful. Most of us have trained our minds in the opposite direction. We've taught ourselves to jump endlessly from one thing to another, scrolling, multitasking, chasing distraction. The result? A restless mind that can't hold a thought steady for more than a few seconds. Pair this with stillness. Each morning, before the day begins, give yourself 2 quiet minutes. Sit, breathe, and let your thoughts rise and fall like waves. Don't chase them. Don't fight them. Just notice. This isn't about silencing the mind. It's about learning to watch it without being dragged. Every time you sit in stillness, you bring a little more of the unconscious into the light. You notice patterns you've been repeating. You recognize worries that have no real ground. You see the way your mind bends reality. This awareness is the beginning of freedom. Without it, you live as if controlled by fate. With it, you begin to choose. Here's the beauty of these practices. They can be done anywhere. Waiting for the bus? Break down the street signs into shapes. Sitting in a meeting? Notice the geometry of the room. Stressed in traffic? Breathe and let the thoughts settle instead of chasing them. The world becomes your training ground. Each situation is another chance to polish the mirror. Plato described philosophy as a turning of the soul toward the light. Each of these small moments is exactly that turning. And the results? Subtle at first, but life-changing. You'll notice that your thoughts don't control you as much. The same stressful situations will come, but they won't drag you down with the same force. Emotions will rise, but you'll be able to hold steady, like a sailor who has finally learned to steer the ship rather than be tossed by the waves. Don't underestimate the simplicity. The mind loves complexity. It wants dramatic solutions, life-changing breakthroughs. But the truth is, mastery is built in quiet, ordinary repetitions. 5 minutes of geometric focus, 2 minutes of stillness. Done every day, these tiny acts reshape the way your mind reflects reality. Over time, they turn confusion into clarity. They turn scattered thoughts into grounded presence. And that is how you begin not just to exist, but to truly live. So here's the choice in front of you. Keep letting your mind run wild, scattered by every distraction, weighed down by every reflection. Or start small. Take one object today, break it down into shapes. Sit for 2 minutes tomorrow morning and just watch your thoughts. It's not about perfection, it's about practice. Because practice is what polishes the mirror. And the clearer the mirror, the clearer your life becomes. In the end, life isn't about the endless reflections your mind throws at you. It's about touching reality as it truly is. The clearer your mirror, the clearer your path. Don't let your days slip by in distortion. Choose to live with presence, strength, and clarity. If this message spoke to you, take the next step. Watch one of the videos waiting for you on the screen and keep sharpening your mind. And thank you for walking this path with us, for being a part of Stoic Journal.